I'm Maria, 34 female. I live in a modest two-bedroom apartment in the city, a place I've slowly made my own over the years. As a senior accountant, my life is built on order and predictability, a stark contrast to the chaotic family I was raised in. This story is about how the single most chaotic event of my life, a devastating fire, revealed that the family I'd spent my life supporting wouldn't even bother to answer a text when I needed them most, yet had no problem demanding thousands of dollars when their own greed caught up with them. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The smell is something you never forget. It's not like the cozy, comforting scent of a campfire or a fireplace. It's acrid, chemical, and suffocating. It's the smell of your life turning to toxic smoke. The fire started in the apartment below mine, a faulty electrical panel according to the fire marshal. It happened on a Thursday night, just after 10 p.m. I was in my pajamas, winding down with a book, when the piercing shriek of the building's fire alarm split the quiet. At first, it was just an annoyance, the kind of false alarm that happens twice a year when someone burns their popcorn. But then came the smell, thick and oily, seeping under my door. Panic, cold and sharp, shot through me. I grabbed my purse, my phone, and my cat, Midnight, stuffing him into his carrier as he yowled in protest. The hallway was already hazy with smoke. I didn't look back, I just ran. Standing on the sidewalk across the street, wrapped in a coarse blanket a Red Cross volunteer had given me, I watched orange flames lick out of my own windows. The life I had so meticulously built, the furniture I'd saved for, the books I'd collected since college, the photos I'd never gotten around to digitizing, was all being consumed. Every memory, every piece of my sanctuary was turning into ash. It was a complete and total loss. The firefighters managed to contain the blaze before it spread to the entire building, but my unit and the one below were gutted. Water damage and smoke destroyed what the fire didn't. Shivering more from shock than the cold, I did what any daughter and sister would do. I opened my phone, my fingers clumsy and stiff, and went to our family group chat. The chat was named Familia Forever, a cheesy title my mom, Isabella, had insisted on. It included her, my dad Carlos, and my younger brother Marco. I was always the one posting practical updates, reminders about birthdays, questions about holiday plans. They were the ones posting blurry photos and asking for favors. I typed out a simple, direct message, my thumb hovering over the screen before I sent it. There was a fire in my building. Midnight and I are safe, but we lost everything. I stared at the words, at the 3 little dots that showed they had been delivered. Then I waited. I waited for the frantic phone call from my mom, the barrage of texts from my brother asking if I needed anything, the concerned message from my dad. The minutes stretched into an agonizingly long hour. I watched the last of the flames get extinguished, the firefighters moving like ghosts through the charred skeleton of my home. My phone remained silent. I checked the group chat again. The word delivered was still there, stark and lonely beneath my message. No read receipts. No replies. I told myself they must be asleep. It was late on a Thursday, after all. My dad goes to bed early, and my mom usually follows. Marco's schedule was anyone's guess, but maybe he was out. I tried to rationalize their silence, to build a plausible explanation that didn't involve the cold, hard truth that was beginning to settle in my gut. They just hadn't seen it. That had to be it. A volunteer gently guided me toward a temporary shelter set up in a nearby community center. I was given a cot, another blanket, and a bottle of water. I sat there in a daze, Midnight curled up in his carrier at my feet, the low hum of other displaced residents a somber backdrop to my own spinning thoughts. My best friend, Sophia, was on a work trip in another state, unreachable until the morning. My family was my only local support system. I sent another text, this time just to my mom. "Mom, please call me when you get this. I really need to talk to you." Again, only the deafening silence of a message sent into the void. I tried calling each of them, Mom, Dad, Marco. Every call went straight to voicemail. It was as if their phones were turned off, or perhaps as if I had been blocked. The thought was so absurd I dismissed it immediately. Why would they block me? It made no sense. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flames. I felt the heat, smelled the smoke. But worse than the fire was the chilling silence from the three people WHO were supposed to care the most. I was their daughter, their sister. The responsible one, the one they called whenever they needed help. I was the one who co-signed Marco's car loan, the one who helped my parents navigate their insurance paperwork when my dad went on disability, the one who always brought the most expensive dish to family potlucks. I had built my life on being reliable, on being the rock. Now, my own foundation had crumbled, and my family was nowhere to be found. The shelter was cold, sterile, and filled with the quiet grief of strangers. Yet in that moment, I had never felt more alone. The fire had taken my home, but my family's silence was beginning to burn away something far more important, my trust. And as the hours ticked by with no word, a new feeling began to smolder within the wreckage of my shock, a cold, hard knot of resentment. I just didn't realize yet how deep the betrayal truly ran. The morning after the fire was a blur of logistics and exhaustion. I met with an insurance agent Sophia had recommended, a kind but businesslike woman who walked me through the first steps of filing a claim. I filled out police reports and spoke with representatives from the Red Cross, who gave me a voucher for a few nights in a cheap motel. Through it all, I kept my phone clutched in my hand, my thumb compulsively refreshing the family group chat. Still nothing. The delivered status on my messages felt like a mockery. Not a single read receipt. It was now well past 9 a.m. on a Friday. My family, early risers by habit, would undoubtedly be awake. The excuses I had made for them the night before were wearing thin, leaving behind a raw, exposed nerve of hurt. I finally managed to get through to Sophia. The moment she heard my voice, shaky and thin, she went into crisis mode. "Maria, oh my God, are you okay? Where are you?" she asked, her voice a soothing balm on my frayed nerves. I explained everything, the fire, the shelter, the silence from my family. "That's weird," she said, her hesitation speaking volumes. "Really weird, even for them. Are you sure their phones are on?" I assured her I had tried calling multiple times, each one rolling over to voicemail. "I'll be on the first flight back tomorrow morning," she promised. "Just hang in there, we'll figure this out." Her unwavering support was the only thing holding me together. After securing the motel room, the first thing I did was take a long, hot shower, trying to wash away the smell of smoke that clung to my skin and hair. I felt like a ghost haunting someone else's life. I had the clothes on my back, my purse, and my cat. That was it. Everything else was gone. Sitting on the edge of the stiff motel bed, I decided to try a different approach. Maybe something was wrong with the group chat. I opened up my social media, something I rarely did. I wasn't a big poster, but I followed my family to keep up with their lives, which they documented with relentless enthusiasm. And that's when I saw it. It was a new post from my brother Marco, uploaded just an hour after I had sent my desperate text into the family chat. It was a photo, a group photo. In it were my mom, my dad, and Marco, all grinning from ear to ear. They were standing in front of a ridiculously oversized gingerbread house at some kind of festive-looking resort. The caption he wrote was like a physical blow, kicking off the best family weekend ever. So glad we could all get away and disconnect. Family first getaway making memories. And underneath the caption, he had tagged all three of them, Isabella, Carlos, and himself. He had even tagged a cousin who lived halfway across the country, but he hadn't tagged me. I stared at the photo, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. Disconnect. They had all, in a coordinated effort, turned off their phones or put them on silent to disconnect for a family weekend. A family weekend that I, apparently, was not a part of. A family weekend they had planned and were currently enjoying while my home burned to the ground. The timeline was sickeningly perfect. My text message, pleading for help and comfort, had arrived just as they were settling into their fun-filled vacation, and they had deliberately ignored it. The silence wasn't an accident. It was a choice. I scrolled through the comments. Aunts and cousins had already chimed in. "Looks like so much fun," one wrote. "Wish we were there," said another. "Where is Maria?" one of my more observant cousins asked. I waited, my breath held, to see if anyone would reply to that comment. No one did. The question just hung there, unanswered. My own family was actively curating a reality where I didn't exist, all while I was huddled in a shelter, surrounded by strangers. The betrayal was so profound, so complete, that it stole the air from my lungs. It wasn't just that they didn't care. It was that they had actively chosen not to. They had prioritized their little getaway over my NT. Ray life being upended. The #family first was a cruel joke. For them, family was a selective club, and I was only granted admission when they needed something. My shock curdled into a cold, hard rage. This wasn't just negligence. This was a deliberate act of exclusion. They had planned a trip, packed their bags, and left without a single word to me. And when disaster struck, they made the conscious decision to continue their perfect weekend, unburdened by my problems. My hands were shaking as I took a screenshot of the post, then another of the unanswered texts in our group chat. Evidence. I wasn't sure what for yet, but my accountant brain, the part of me that relied on documentation and proof, took over. I needed a record of this moment. This precise moment where I realized my family was not my family at all. They were just people I was related to by blood, people who saw me not as a person, but as a resource. A safety net they felt entitled to, but one they would happily cut away the second it became inconvenient. The hurt was immense, a gaping wound in my chest. But beneath it, a new feeling was taking root. It was a quiet, chilling resolve. They had left me to sift through the ashes of my life alone. They had smiled for pictures while I was homeless. They thought they could just disconnect from my reality. But I was still here. And I was done being their reliable, forgotten daughter. The fire had destroyed my past, but their betrayal had just ignited my future. A future where they would learn what it truly meant to lose everything. The next few weeks were a grueling marathon of bureaucracy and survival. Sophia flew back as promised and was a force of nature. She helped me navigate the labyrinth of insurance claims, find a short-term furnished apartment, and buy the bare necessities: clothes, toiletries, cat food for midnight. She was my rock, my sounding board, and the only family I had in that moment. Every day, she'd check in, asking not just about the practical things, but about how I was feeling. "It's okay to be angry, Maria," she told me one evening as we ate pizza on the floor of my temporary living room. "What they did is unforgivable." Her validation was a lifeline. It stopped me from questioning my own sanity, from falling into the trap of thinking I had somehow overreacted. Throughout this entire period, my phone remained a source of morbid fascination. After 3 full days of silence, the vacation photos stopped. On Sunday evening, my mom sent a single, breezy text to the group chat right below my unacknowledged cry for help. "Hope everyone had a good weekend. We're back." It was as if my message about the fire didn't exist. It was a digital whitewashing of my reality. I didn't respond. Neither did anyone else. A few hours later, my brother Marco posted another message. "Does anyone know where Maria is? She's not answering her phone." The audacity was breathtaking. They hadn't tried to call me during their disconnected weekend, but now that they were back and bored, my silence was suddenly a problem. I continued to ignore them. Their calls started coming in, first from my mom, then my dad, then Marco. I let every single one go to voicemail. The messages they left were a masterclass in passive aggression and feigned concern. "Maria, honey, it's your mother. Call me back. I'm starting to get worried." "Maria, this is your father. Your mother is upset. Just let us know you're all right." "Yo, Ria, where are you? Seriously, pick up. We need to talk." Not once did any of them mention my text. Not once did they ask about the fire. Their concern wasn't for my well-being. It was about my lack of response. I was breaking the unspoken rule of our family dynamic. Maria is always available. Maria always answers. Maria always fixes things. By refusing to engage, I was disrupting the system, and it was making them uncomfortable. My silence, it turned out, was more powerful than any angry confrontation could have been. It forced them to confront the gaping hole where my message should have been addressed. After another 2 days of me ignoring them, my mom finally sent a direct text to me, not the group. Maria, I saw something in the group chat from last week about a fire. Is everything okay? The calculated indifference of that message solidified my resolve. Something about a fire. She was pretending she had just noticed a minor, week-old inconvenience. She wasn't sorry she had ignored me. She was annoyed she had to finally acknowledge it. This was the moment I started digging. My anger needed a direction, a purpose. I started thinking about the unspoken debt my family seemed to believe I owed them. It wasn't just about the emotional labor of being their perpetual crisis manager. It was financial. My mind, trained to see patterns in numbers, began to run a mental ledger of the past decade. There was the $8,000 I'd loaned my parents 5 years ago for a new roof, a loan they conveniently referred to as a gift every time I brought it up. There was the co-signed car loan for Marco, on which I'd had to make 3 payments myself when he forgot. There were the countless smaller things. The $500 for a new water heater for my parents, the $300 to cover Marco's phone bill, the expensive dinners I always paid for under the guise of treating them. The numbers swirled in my head. I needed to see it clearly. That night, I opened a new spreadsheet on the laptop Sophia had lent me. I titled it Family Loan Reconciliation. I spent hours combing through old bank statements, credit card bills, and archived emails. Every transaction, every transfer, every loan was meticulously entered, dated, and categorized. I was creating an audit of their dependency. As the rows filled up, a staggering picture emerged. Over the past 10 years, I had given my family, in loans they never repaid, bills I covered, and major purchases I funded, a grand total of $47,250. Seeing that number in black and white felt like a punch to the gut, nearly $50,000. It was the down payment on a house I never bought, the investments I never made, the vacations I never took. It was the physical manifestation of my role as the family ATM. And what had it got me? A smiley photo from a resort while my world burned down. The spreadsheet wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the expectation, the entitlement. They had taken and taken, never once stopping to consider the cost to me, because they truly believed it was their right. They saw my financial stability not as something I had worked hard to achieve, but as a resource that belonged to the collective, a collective from which I could be easily excluded the moment my needs became an inconvenience. The resort weekend started to make more sense. It wasn't just a fun getaway. It was an escape funded indirectly by me. My steady support allowed them the freedom to be irresponsible, to live beyond their means, to prioritize leisure over their obligations. My dad's disability, my mom's refusal to work full-time, Marco's delusion of being a crypto genius, it was all subsidized by my salary. I had been enabling them for years, mistaking financial support for love. The fire didn't just burn my apartment, it burned away the illusion of our family. The spreadsheet in front of me was the evidence. It was the story of a decade of one-sided sacrifice, and it was about to become the foundation for my revenge. With the spreadsheet, my monument to their entitlement, complete, the next phase of my plan began to take shape. It wasn't enough to know how much they had taken from me. I needed to understand their current financial situation. I needed to know why they were so desperate for my attention now, after weeks of casual neglect. Their sudden, intense need to contact me felt less like familial concern and more like the precursor to a financial request. I could feel it in my bones. My instincts, honed by years of their behavior, were screaming that a big ask was on the horizon. To prepare for it, I needed intelligence. My first target was Marco. He was the weakest link, a walking, talking embodiment of financial irresponsibility, and a braggart to boot. His social media was a goldmine. While he'd been quiet since the disastrous family weekend post, his older posts told a story of reckless spending. Photos of him with a new, top-of-the-line drone for his videography career that never took off. Posts about his huge wins in crypto, often followed by weeks of silence that I now understood probably corresponded with huge losses. He was trying to project an image of wealth and success, but it was a house of cards, and I suspected a strong breeze was coming. Sophia, my paralegal powerhouse, was instrumental in this phase. If he's a day trader, he's probably bragging about it somewhere else too, she suggested. Check forums, Reddit, trading groups. It was a brilliant idea. It took me 2 days of searching, but I finally found him. He was using a slightly altered version of his gaming username, but the profile picture, a poorly photoshopped image of his head on a stockbroker's body, was a dead giveaway. He was active on a subreddit dedicated to high-risk crypto investments, and his posts were not the triumphant declarations he made on his public profiles. They were a litany of disasters. He had gone all in on a series of obscure altcoins that had plummeted in value. His posts were increasingly desperate, asking for advice on recouping major losses and complaining about market manipulation. In his most recent post, made just a day before the frantic calls to me began, he wrote, "I'm in deep, guys. I leveraged everything on this last trade and got wiped out. I owe my exchange a fortune in margin calls. I have 30 days to pay up or they're coming for me. Anyone know a way to get cash fast?" The margin call, that was the ticking time bomb. He hadn't just lost his own money, he owed a significant amount. A quick search on the exchange he mentioned revealed their aggressive collection policies. They didn't just close your account, they sent your debt to collections agencies, tanking your credit score, and sometimes pursuing legal action. Marco was in serious trouble. Next, I turned my attention to my parents. They were more discreet, but they weren't immune to leaving a digital trail. My father, Carlos, for all his talk of being too disabled to work, was an active member of a local golf club's Facebook group. The club was a notoriously expensive one, with hefty annual membership fees. He had recently posted photos of a brand new set of golf clubs, a gift from my mother for his birthday. The clubs alone cost well over $2,000. Where was that money coming from? My mother's part-time retail job barely covered their groceries. My father's disability checks were modest. It didn't add up. The answer, I suspected, lay with their house. They owned their home, having paid off the mortgage years ago. Sophia pointed me toward public records online. "You can check for liens or recent mortgage activity," she explained. "It's all public information." My heart pounded as I typed their address into the county records database, and there it was. A record filed just 6 months prior, a home equity line of credit, or HELOC. They had taken out a loan against the value of their house. The maximum credit line was $75,000. It was like a credit card secured by their home, and I had a sinking feeling they had been treating it as such. That's where the golf clubs came from. That's where the resort weekend came from. They were living off their home's equity, burning through it on luxuries while I was meticulously saving and investing. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place. Marco's margin call was the immediate crisis. My parents, having likely given him money from the HELOC already, were probably tapped out. They had exhausted their own resources, and now, faced with their son's financial implosion, they were turning back to their original, most reliable source of funding, me. They needed a bailout. My fire, my homelessness, my trauma, it was an irrelevant footnote in the grand drama of their financial mismanagement. All their worried calls and texts weren't about my well-being. They were about priming the pump. They were re-establishing contact so they could make a withdrawal from the Bank of Maria. I now had the full picture. The debt wasn't just the $47,250 I had documented. The debt was a decade of enabling, of allowing them to build a lifestyle they couldn't afford on the foundation of my hard work. Their family weekend wasn't just an ignorant oversight. It was a symptom of their disease, a celebration of their financial recklessness, paid for with borrowed money while the person who kept them afloat was losing everything. My anger was no longer a hot, chaotic rage. It was cold, sharp, and focused. I had audited their deceit and found them bankrupt, not just financially, but morally. The stage was set. I knew what they wanted, and now I knew exactly how I was going to use it against them. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening, almost 4 weeks to the day after the fire. I had been anticipating it, rehearsing my lines, preparing my emotional armor. When my mom's name, Isabella, flashed on the screen, I let it ring 3 times before answering, just to let her stew for a few seconds. I took a deep breath, picturing the spreadsheet, the resort photo, the Reddit posts. I clicked accept. Maria, oh, thank goodness, you answered. I was so worried. Her voice was a syrupy blend of relief and manufactured drama. It was the voice she used when she was about to ask for something big. I kept my own voice flat, devoid of emotion. Hi, Mom. Honey, where have you been? We've all been trying to reach you. We were picturing you in a ditch somewhere. You had us sick with worry. The lie was so blatant, so audacious that I almost laughed. I've been busy, I said, the understatement of the century, dealing with the fire. There was a brief, uncomfortable pause on her end. Oh, right, the fire. That's just terrible, sweetheart. A real tragedy. Is everything okay now? She asked, her tone making it clear she was merely ticking a box before getting to her real agenda. I'm managing, I replied coolly. I'm in a temporary apartment. I lost everything I owned, but I'm managing. I let the words hang in the air, a silent accusation. She completely ignored it. Oh, that's good, she said quickly. Listen, honey, the reason I'm calling, something has come up. It's an emergency, a real family emergency. Here it comes, I thought, the main event. What is it? I asked, my voice still a carefully controlled monotone. It's your brother, she said, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper. He got himself into a little bit of trouble. You know how H.E. is with those computer coins. It was a bad investment, a mix-up, really not his fault when you think about the volatile market, but the bottom line is he owes some people money. Serious money. How much money? I asked, already knowing the answer would be tailored to what she thought I could provide. She sighed dramatically. They're demanding $5,000, Maria, $5,000, and they need it by the end of the week. Your father and I, we've done everything we can. We've scraped together every penny, but we're still short. We need your help. It's for your brother. $5,000. A nice, round number. Not so large as to be impossible, but significant enough to be an emergency. It was the exact amount Marco had mentioned he was short in one of his online rants. They had probably coached him to ask for that specific figure. This was the moment, the pivot point. My old self, the dutiful daughter, would have sighed, lectured them a little, and then asked for the bank details. My new self had a different plan. I let the silence stretch for a long, painful moment. I could hear her breathing on the other end, anxious, waiting. Finally, I spoke, injecting a note of weary resignation into my voice. Mom, after everything, I don't know. I just lost my entire home. All my savings are tied up in deposits for a new place, replacing my things. I don't have that kind of money just sitting around. Oh, Maria, please, she begged, the desperation ramping up. You're the only one we can turn to. You've always been the responsible one. He's your brother. Family has to stick together in times like these. We would do the same for you. The hypocrisy of that last statement was so profound, it almost buckled my knees. I closed my eyes, picturing them laughing at the resort. We would do the same for you. Okay, I said, my voice sounding small and defeated. It was a masterful performance. Okay, Mom, you're right, he's my brother. I let out a long, put-upon sigh. But I can't just transfer it. The insurance money is complicated, it's all tied up with the bank. The only way I can get that much cash quickly is to do a withdrawal in person. I'll need everyone there. You, Dad, and Marco. We need to have a serious talk about this. About everything. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. A family meeting was a small price to pay for $5,000. Of course, sweetheart, anything, when and where. My temporary apartment. Saturday at noon, I said. I'll go to the bank in the morning and get the cash. But I mean it. I want everyone there. We need to get on the same page about Marco's finances and other things. We'll be there, Maria. We'll all be there, she gushed, relief flooding her voice. Oh, thank you, you're a lifesaver. You've always been our angel. We hung up and a slow, cold smile spread across my face. The bait had been taken. They thought I was the same old Maria, the reliable family ATM, just a little bruised from the fire. They thought they were coming over for a lecture and a check. They had no idea they were walking into an audit. They were coming for a handout, but what they were going to get was a reckoning. I had 4 days to prepare. I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet. I printed out Marco's Reddit posts. I printed the public records for the HELOC. I printed a screenshot of their smiling faces at the resort, time-stamped just 1 hour after my world had gone up in flames. I wasn't just going to say no. I was going to present them with an itemized invoice for their betrayal, and it was going to be glorious. Saturday arrived with a cold, gray drizzle that perfectly matched my mood. My temporary apartment was sparse, furnished with generic, soulless pieces that screamed corporate housing. It was the perfect sterile environment for what was about to happen. There were no cozy family photos on the walls, no sentimental knickknacks to soften the blow. It was a courtroom, and I was the judge, jury, and prosecutor. On the coffee table, I arranged my evidence in 3 neat stacks, one for each of them, like place settings at a dinner party from hell. Each stack contained a copy of the family loan reconciliation, spreadsheet, printouts of Marco's desperate Reddit posts, the county records for my parents, HELOC, and on top of each pile, the glossy, smiling photo of their best family weekend ever. In the center of the table, I placed a single, thick manila envelope. They arrived precisely at noon, a united front of entitlement. My mother, Isabella, swept in first, already radiating theatrical gratitude. My father, Carlos, followed, leaning a little too heavily on his supposed disability. Marco trailed behind them both, his eyes darting around the room, avoiding my gaze. He looked pale and jittery, the physical manifestation of a margin call. "Maria, darling," my mother began, moving to hug me. I took a deliberate step back, gesturing toward the couch. "My C." Oldness threw her off, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. "Have a seat," I said, my voice calm and even. "All of you." They sat down together on the stiff sofa, a little too close, like a herd seeking safety in numbers. They eyed the envelope on the table, their greed barely veiled. "So," my father started, attempting a tone of patriarchal authority. "Your mother said you were going to help Marco out. We appreciate it, Maria. We knew we could count on you." "I did go to the bank this morning," I said, watching their eyes light up. "But first, we need to have the talk I mentioned." I sat down in the armchair opposite them, the coffee table a chasm between us. "We need to talk about money." I picked up the first spreadsheet and handed it to my mother. "This is for you and Dad." I handed the second to Marco. "And this is yours." Confusion flickered across their faces as they looked at the documents. I saw my mother's eyes widen as she scanned the columns, the dates, the amounts. Marco just stared at it, his mouth slightly agape. "What is this?" my father grumbled, squinting at the page. "That is a detailed record of every dollar I have given you over the past 10 years that was never classified as a gift and never repaid," I explained, my voice as crisp as the spreadsheet paper. "The total, as you can see at the bottom, is $47,250. Let's call it, for the sake of simplicity, the family debt." My mother scoffed. "Maria, this is ridiculous. We're family. You don't keep a running tab on family." "I do now," I said flatly. "I started it the day I lost my home in a fire and my family ignored my text for help so they could enjoy a weekend at a resort, paid for, I assume, by the $75,000 line of credit you took out against your house." I slid the HELOC documents across the table. My parents froze, their faces turning ashen. I then turned to Marco. "And you're not in a little bit of trouble. You gambled everything on high-risk crypto, got wiped out, and now you're facing a margin call you can't pay." I tossed the printouts of his Reddit posts onto his lap. "You didn't have a bad investment. You have a gambling addiction, and you've been lying to everyone about it." Marco shrank into the couch, unable to speak. My mother, however, found her voice, a screech of indignation. "How dare you? How dare you spy on us and throw our generosity in our faces? We did that for your father's birthday, and your brother made a mistake. You're supposed to help. That's what family does." "Family?" I stood up, my voice rising for the first time, laced with the icy fury I had kept bottled up for weeks. Let me show you what this family does. I picked up the resort photograph and held it up. This is what this family does. This picture was posted 1 hour after I sent a text saying I had lost everything. Everything. While I was sitting in a shelter, wondering if my cat and I were going to sleep on the street, you were taking selfies and using the hashtag #FamilyFirst. I threw the photo on the table. It slid across the polished surface and came to rest in front of my father. You don't want a daughter, you don't want a sister, I said, my voice dropping again, low and dangerous. You want a bank, an emergency fund with no withdrawal limits and no consequences. For 10 years, I have been your safety net. I co-signed your loans, paid your bills, funded your down payments. I sacrificed my own financial future so you could live comfortably beyond your means. And in the one moment, the single, most terrifying moment of my life, when I needed you, you weren't just unavailable. You were absent. You made a choice to ignore me. You silenced my crisis so it wouldn't interrupt your vacation. Tears were streaming down my mother's face now, tears of anger and self-pity, not remorse. My father just stared at the table, his face grim. Marco looked like he was going to be sick. So no, I continued, my voice shaking with the force of my conviction. I am not giving you $5,000. The Bank of Maria is officially closed. Permanently. I picked up the manila envelope from the table. For a second, a flicker of hope appeared in Marco's eyes. I opened the clasp and pulled out the contents. It wasn't cash. It was a single, notarized document. This, I said, holding it up, is a legally drafted loan agreement and repayment plan. It covers the full $47,250. You have 2 options. You can sign it, agreeing to a monthly repayment schedule. Or you can refuse, in which case my lawyer will be filing a lawsuit against you in small claims court for every single documented loan. The choice is yours. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the sound of the rain against the window. Judgment Day had arrived, and I was holding all the cards. The aftermath of that confrontation was not the explosive SCR. Eaming match I had half expected. Instead, it was a quiet, pathetic collapse. My mother stared at the legal document as if it were written in a foreign language. My father, stripped of his bluster, just shook his head slowly, muttering, "I can't believe this." And Marco, faced with the consequences of his actions laid bare, finally broke. He buried his face in his hands and started to sob, not quiet, remorseful tears, but ugly, gasping sobs of a child who had finally been told, no. "What are we supposed to do?" my mother whispered, her voice trembling. "Marco will be ruined." "That is no longer my problem to solve," I said, my voice devoid of any sympathy. "He is a grown man. You are his parents. Perhaps you can sell the new golf clubs or cancel your membership. Perhaps Marco can get a real job. You will have to figure it out, just like I had to figure out how to rebuild my life from scratch alone." They didn't sign the document that day. They left in a stunned, silent procession, leaving the papers on the coffee table. They had walked in expecting a bailout and walked out with a bill for nearly $50,000. The power dynamic of our entire lives had been irrevocably shattered in the space of 15 minutes. For the next week, I heard nothing. I half expected them to call my bluff, to assume I wouldn't go through with the lawsuit. They underestimated me one last time. The following Monday, as promised, Sophia helped me file the paperwork. Marco was served with a notice for the car payments I had made and the personal loans. My parents were served with a notice for the roof loan and the other large sums. The court dates were set. The reality of a legal battle, of public records and potential wage garnishments, was the final nail in the coffin of their denial. 2 days after being served, a very different-sounding Isabella called me. Her voice was flat, defeated. "We'll sign the papers, Maria," she said. "Just don't take us to court." We met at a notary's office, not my apartment. The air was thick with resentment and unspoken anger. They signed the repayment agreement without making eye contact with me. The plan was aggressive but realistic, calculated based on their income and assets. It would take them years to pay me back. Every month, a payment would be automatically transferred from their account to mine, a constant, undeniable reminder of the consequences of their actions. The first payment arrived on the first of the following month. Seeing that money in my account wasn't triumphant. It was just quiet closure. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about enforcing a boundary that should have been drawn years ago. In the months that followed, I focused on myself. The insurance settlement finally came through, and while it couldn't replace the sentimental value of what I'd lost, it provided a financial foundation. I found a new apartment, a place that felt like mine from the moment I walked in. It was brighter than my old place, with big windows and a small balcony. As I slowly furnished it, I chose every item with intention. Nothing was just a placeholder. Every piece was a deliberate choice, a brick in the new life I was building. Sophia was my constant companion through it all. We painted the walls together, assembled frustrating IKEA furniture, and celebrated with champagne when my new couch was finally delivered. "To new foundations," she said, raising her glass, both literal and figurative. I never saw my family again. They continued to make the monthly payments, a silent, digital interaction that was the only tie I had left to them. I heard through the grapevine that Marco had been forced to sell his car and move back in with my parents. He'd gotten a job at a warehouse, the humbling reality of a steady paycheck finally eclipsing his crypto fantasies. My parents had to sell their home and downsize to a small condo to pay off the HELOC and manage the debt to me. Their life of subsidized leisure was over. One evening, about a year after the fire, I was sitting on my new balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Midnight was purring on my lap. My phone buzzed with a notification. The monthly payment from my family had just been deposited. For a moment, I felt a familiar pang of something, not sadness, not anger, but a ghost of what I once thought was love. I thought about the family I had tried so hard to hold together, the one I had sacrificed so much for. But then I looked around at the life I had built from the ashes. A life of peace, of self-respect, of true, reciprocal friendships. A life where I was no longer a resource to be drained, but a person to be valued. The fire had taken everything from me, but in doing so, it had given me a priceless gift, the chance to escape. They hadn't just left me to burn, they had inadvertently set me free. And as the last sliver of sun disappeared below the horizon, I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I had risen from the rubble stronger than ever before.